Hey everyone, I am Charles Mattocks and welcome to Urban Longevity. All right. I'm excited to be here for I'm going to say for our first show. Um, we are we did a series before, show before, but I kind of wanted to like rebrand and go kind of younger, fresher, newer, hipper. Longevity is a topic that literally has become a passion for mine. Just overall health, but longevity, this new space that seems to be emerging, and we came up with this show, Urban Longevity, because I wanted to be able to reach more people, reach all races and colors of people, and be able to educate people on longevity and better health. And I saw a need and a niche in this space where it wasn't just doctors talking to doctors and experts talking to experts and researchers talking to researchers, but trying to figure out how we can make an impact. I'm going to read something here, and actually Bradley, who's coming up right now, you'll meet him in a second. But we were talking yesterday, and he shared something, and he said, "True successful longevity requires mental, cognitive, and financial health too. This is especially important through the urban longevity lens because a larger percentage of people living in cities do not have access to generational wealth or good financial literacy." And this is what our focus will be on. So, we are the producers right now. We just produced an amazing series that'll be out soon on longevity. We shot that in Costa Rica. Bradley was one of the stars of that, but I just love his mind. And yeah, we're going to take a deep dive into who he is, a little bit about him, and his passion for longevity. Bradley,
Charles, good to see
how are
you.
you, how are you, brother?
Fantastic today. It's a beautiful
Good,
day in the
good.
district.
Oh man, I'm in Florida, and you're in
DC.
DC. It's
Yep.
it's, low, it's nice and warm out there too.
Nice and warm. I feel like summer's finally here.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. So I just wanted to, jump in real quick and let's get things started. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I love your mind. And I thought, you know what, I'd love to continue working with Bradley and just, be able to do some amazing things, make some changes out here, save some lives, inspire some people. Number one, tell the folks a little bit about yourself and also why longevity for you.
Ha. I got into the space through aging first. Aging, of course, talking about our oldest populations and how their lives are impacted during really the last part of life. It transitioned to longevity really when I was at AARP. And of course, my expertise is broadened to look at demographic change as well. And then looking, of course, across multiple groups, both income and race and gender, and even geography, because our longevity journeys, our demographic realities are starkly different depending on where we live, how much income we have, and how much access to things, the basics like education and good food.
Yeah. Now, Bradley, and we talked about this on set too as well. The word longevity or this space of longevity, what really is it? Because let's just say a young minority mother in Brooklyn.
Right.
Does this apply to her as well? This space of longevity?
I mean, it really depends. Statistically, Black populations, Indigenous populations have shorter life expectancies than white people or Latino people or even Asian populations. So it isn't delivered evenly. Now, this isn't to say that there aren't plenty of people within the Black community, within urban communities that don't age well and have fantastic longevity. The data suggests, though, that the deck is stacked against them.
Mhm.
And this is for a myriad of reasons. This is because people have in urban areas, lower access to income, that generational wealth that I mentioned, but also the basics. Are you living in a food desert, or do you have access to fresh fruits and vegetables and meats? Are you getting that right education up front? Can you get to a hospital? I mean, that's a real basic thing. Can you get to healthcare? And that's becoming further out of reach for certainly the lower income portion of our population. And of course, that's what's holding our longevity behind. I was struck last year. My company did research across the Midwest, preceding some research that the Alzheimer's Association put out last year. But there are parts of this country where 1 out of 3 people are already over the age of 65. And in some jurisdictions where 1 out of 10 people have Alzheimer's or dementia. Now, the Alzheimer's organization followed up on this. They weighted the data around race, and they found that Baltimore City in Maryland had the highest rate of dementia in the country. The number 2 place, Prince George's County, Maryland. Both of these cities, predominantly Black, middle to lower income folks living there. And it just really signals how different our longevity journeys are. Because you can certainly go into communities across this country that are higher income, predominantly white, well educated, and you'll find life expectancies up to 97 and above. And that's at birth. That's quite a long time to be alive.
But so when we think of this longevity space,
Sure.
one of the people that come to mind is Brian Johnson, right? We see
Mhm.
all the things he's doing to himself, all the techniques, the tools, the machinery, the this, that, and the other thing. Um, where are we really going with this? Is it a pill that we're looking for, or is it a magic potion? Where are we going with this longevity conversation that will get to a point, we hope, that can allow people to live longer, healthier lives?
I mean, you have to think about longevity kind of like compound interest. And that metaphor is really important because the earlier investments we make in our health and our well being, and that's everything, like I say, cognitive, physical, mental, financial, they will have a multiplier effect for us long term. And the fundamentals of longevity really are true today as they were 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 years.
Yeah.
They are the same. Old people aren't new. Old people who are working aren't new. The
Hmm.
fact that we have so many more of them today, so many people who have actually experienced healthy longevity, is really a testament to our societies making really good investments throughout the life course that have achieved this result. But again, those investments have not been delivered evenly. So if you're in the upper income brackets over the course of the past 40 or 50 years, you've actually seen your longevity increase. You've actually seen your healthy longevity increase. But if you're in the bottom half of the population, the lower income groups, you're actually seeing your longevity plateau, or in some cases, reverse. Now, Brian Johnson and his ilk are all the rage right now because they're
Yeah.
talking about these solutions that
Hmm.
haven't really been tested yet.
Hmm.
Is it a pill? Is it something like metformin, which is being
Yeah.
hawked by somebody like David Sinclair?
Yeah.
I don't think a pill will simply solve the longevity question. The
Hmm.
longevity question is more about what are those investments early and throughout life leading up until we get to those magical ages of 80 or 90 or 100, where we're still living with great vitality, we're still working, we're still engaging in our communities. Some people are actually still running marathons in their
Hmm.
80s now. I mean, this is really revolutionary stuff.
Hmm.
Now, there's plenty of research that's out there and plenty of scientific insight into what's possible. And it is possible through therapies that we might be able to extend the human lifespan past its upper limit, which is around about 120 today. And there is consensus that the first person to live to 150 has already been born. And that
Hmm.
will be done through a mix of not just
Yeah.
the things that we know,
Yeah.
eating well, living well,
Yeah.
earning money, but also these medical interventions, these therapies. And let me put a point to this because I know Aubrey de Grey was a recent guest of yours.
Yeah.
Aubrey has said, and I think it's actually a really interesting point, that we're achieving essentially longevity escape velocity, meaning that once we reach this point where we go past 120, the upper limit may no longer exist. And that's a pretty revolutionary way of thinking. But Aubrey and people like him, the scientists, are no longer looking at aging as a process. They're
Hmm.
looking at aging and aging as a disease and
Hmm.
the thing that we can actually cure. And that's really a revolutionary way of turning the subject of aging around and really focusing on longevity and, of course, closing the gap between healthy longevity and just living long.
Hmm. But people living longer, doesn't that come with its own issues as well?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right now, we have a population that is living longer on
Yeah.
average. And while we can applaud this, we also have a population that's living longer in poor health. And that's not a good thing. I don't like to be sick myself. I don't think
Yeah.
most people like to be sick.
Hmm.
So living in a downward decline for a long period doesn't sound really attractive. It's also not sustainable. It's
Hmm.
not sustainable for the systems we have in place today. So it's not really a good thing. I like some of the work that's out there right now that's really hyper focused on closing that gap between longevity, lifespan, and
Hmm.
healthy longevity. Because
Hmm.
when I die, I'd like to die not in a hospital bed,
Yeah.
but actually actively engaged in the community, living in my own home. That's a dream for me. And I think that there are certainly a number of scientists that are working to get us there.
When you talked about the research, I mean, what type of research? There's a lot of research going on, but
There
what type
is.
of research have you seen that might be actually beneficial for the here and now, to maybe the next 2 or 3, 4, 5 years?
I mean, there's a long arc to research and scientific discovery. There's even a longer arc to getting approval from organizations like the Food and Drug Administration to
Hmm.
get these therapies online. And that's why some people, David Sinclair included, have said, like, I'm doing these things already and they're
Hmm.
working,
Yeah.
without having that guardrail of the FDA saying, yes, in fact, this works.
Hmm.
And that's where we get into some muddy waters. There are plenty of different therapies that are being tested right now.
Hmm.
Whether or not they make it to the public, well, that's not for me to decide. That's above my pay grade. But some of them are very promising. There are companies that are looking at how to use the lymph system,
Hmm.
essentially to regrow organs. And while this sounds like super hyper scientific fiction, it could be possible in the coming years. It wasn't that long ago that we would have thought that just doing a transplant
Hmm.
was completely foreign. And
Hmm.
now transplants are relatively normal.
Yeah.
It was science fiction not that long ago to regrow organs using animals for humans. And we're doing it now. So all of these interventions, the swapping out of body parts, the regenerative therapies, are really interesting. They certainly provide a lot of fodder for conversation, but
Hmm.
will they get there? Possibly. And those things kind of make me excited, especially if they're going to help me live better longer.
Yeah. One thing now, to jump back to Brian Johnson, one thing I like about Brian is that he has started from everything from a total different diet
Mhm.
to his exercise to his sleep patterns. I think he sleeps like 8 continuous hours a day at night. Um, all the therapies that he's working on. He has really become, in many ways, because when we think of longevity, number one, I don't think at times when I hear certain speeches that there's enough focus right now on just nutrition.
Yeah.
And that is really some of the key things. I was listening to a young lady yesterday who had just bumped into it. She was having a ton of issues, all kind of health issues, and she was doing, I guess, maybe vegan or maybe the standard American diet, and
Mhm.
she had gone carnivore,
Yeah.
and literally everything has changed about her health. I mean, she is vibrant, she's excited, has none of those issues anymore, and I think that at the core of it is really, number one, is that nutrition, exercise, obviously, making sure that we weigh an ideal weight, which we know that plays into issues too as well. And and other things. But and of course, you know, trying to live a stress-free life
Sure.
without the you know the issues of financial burdens and things like that. Um, so, what do you think? What do you think? Why the should there be more of a focus on those things that we can do now with being able to take this longevity conversation to people today?
Yeah, we would pretty dramatically increase average longevity
Yeah,
if we just focused on the fundamentals. And I take what Brian Johnson says with a grain of salt, mostly because I don't have $2 million a year to spend on my own longevity experiments,
yeah,
and I don't think the average American does
no,
either.
yeah,
So yeah, you take it with a grain of salt. He's an audience of one. He's an experiment of one person.
yeah,
Um, yeah, there isn't much efficacy to it yet, but it sells a lot of papers. It
yeah,
sells a lot of media because it is sensational. He is
mhm,
doing something really radical and really unique, and people like to read about that.
yeah,
But does it have efficacy? I don't know. I'm not
mm,
his doctor. I can't say. But that lifestyle doesn't sound particularly attractive to me
no,
either.
yeah, yeah,
And I don't think it would be within the reach of most Americans either, not just the cost, but the regimen. I mean, that
mhm,
regimen is a full time job to, as he says, reverse his biological age and
yeah,
actually increase his longevity. We
mhm,
just don't have that wherewithal. And I don't see that coming anytime soon.
yeah. And we know that there are tests that test biologically. What do you think about those tests?
I think that I think they're interesting. I think
Hmm.
from a branding perspective, they're problematic,
Hmm.
um, because what are they measured against? Like, what is the delta here? And that has not been really expressed to folks. I think in a meaningful way. It's really convenient to say, I'm a 50-year-old person and I've got a
Yeah,
biological age of a 40-year-old person. But
yeah,
what does that really mean?
yeah,
And I don't think the scientists, the people that are selling these products, have really done a great job of explaining that to us
yeah,
quite yet.
yeah,
Because there is some science behind your
yeah,
overall health outcomes.
yeah,
But by putting an age number on it, I think that's problematic. I think that does a disservice to people's age overall. It erases the lived experience of a person. And yeah, I'm not the biggest fan.
yeah, yeah. And you know, you said something there, and that's one of the reasons why I love what we're doing, because I think that why while a biological clock could be a test or whatever could be a fantastic thing, we really need to understand it a little bit more, right?
Yeah,
It
I mean, I personally would love if I went to the doctor and he said, you're operating at, 75% of
yeah,
your potential. I think
yeah,
that's a much more valuable measure to me than saying, "Oh, Brad, you're a 46-year-old guy and
yeah,
your biological age is 42,"
yeah,
or the reverse, 52.
yeah,
It's much more important for me to hear from my doctor, my physician, the guy who's actually taking care of me,
yeah,
to say, you're operating at about 75% of your potential.
yeah,
We want to get that percentage up.
yeah,
That to me is valuable because it allows us to goal set, I think,
exactly.
in a more meaningful way.
Exactly, and you know, then you have that thing. Well, if I'm 50 years old and I have a 60-year-old body per se,
Correct.
how do I reverse that? But you
Well,
know,
right. And of course, what's highly problematic about biological age is it doesn't take into account other factors. So I might have the body of a 30-year-old. Wouldn't that be great? But I might be socially isolated. And that social isolation actually could have more harmful effects on my longevity than
hmm,
whether or not I'm carrying around a few extra pounds,
hmm,
whether or not I dive into the drink a bit too much.
hmm,
That to me is where there's a big miss. So I always say, and this is not based on science, it's just based on observation.
hmm,
I would if I'm a betting man, I'd put my bets on a man who's a barfly, who's constantly out and socializing over a marathon runner who has no friends.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
social isolation is terrible for you.
yeah,
It's terrible for people, and it has similar outcomes to smoking,
hmm,
up to a pack a day. So yeah, I think we have to take a more holistic point of view on this, not just say this is what a person's body, their physical health is.
Yeah. When did we, or did we, switch from just health and wellness to longevity? Is it similar?
It is. I mean, we used to we used to say a lot of things. We used to say, birth from cradle to grave.
Yeah.
We're constantly moving the needle on what is our goal. Longevity as a term, I think, really started to stick maybe about a decade ago now,
Hmm.
when research was published about longevity
Hmm.
from a socioeconomic perspective. There were two bodies of research. One was driven by AARP, where I worked on some of this project called the
Hmm.
longevity economy. Joe
Hmm.
Coughlin, a professor at MIT, wrote a best-selling book called The Longevity Economy, talking about how older adults were really growing in number. And as a result, there was all of this new social and economic opportunity that we didn't have before. The fundamental part of this, though, was we had all of these extra older adults now because of these early interventions,
Hmm.
because we had good access to healthcare, good access to food, relative financial stability over the life course. That's how we got there. It wasn't necessarily because of a single pill,
Yeah.
but it was because of some medical interventions. Vaccines keep kids alive. Regardless of what your position is on vaccines, statistically, they keep kids alive.
Yeah.
The more kids that survive into adulthood, the greater chance they're going to grow up to be older adults. What I think has happened with longevity is that it's got somewhat pigeonholed to just mean older adults. And this is a big problem, I think, certainly in expressing what true longevity is to a new audience of people, because longevity is your total lifespan. It's a
Hmm.
marathon, not a
Yeah.
sprint.
Yeah.
You just don't arrive at 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years old by some stroke of luck. That is highly rare.
Yeah.
You get there, 20% is genetics, and the rest of it is based on what you're doing,
Hmm.
how you're socialized, the education you've had, the money you've made, the way you've treated your body over time. It's not just you arrive there magically at some point.
And the anti-aging movement.
I mean, anti-aging has always been around in some way. This dates back all the way into antiquity, into the classical times with people like Ponce de Leon searching for the fountain of youth. We are an obsessive youth culture. We want to be young, so we teach people early on that old is bad, young is good, and this has foundations in our culture that date back to the very beginning. So these things were really multiplied during the 20th century as retirement normalized, people left the workforce, and youth culture really took hold through mass media and the like. Now, people still fall prey to anti-aging products, but even that industry is starting to evolve a bit, and they're rethinking their messaging to be more like pro-aging. But you can put lipstick on a pig, it's still a
Yeah.
pig.
Yeah.
There are still these attempts to reverse the clock. And you know what, Charles?
Yeah.
We haven't found that fountain of youth yet. We've
Yeah.
found better ways to live. We've certainly extended the lifespan. And by doing so, we've pushed a lot of healthy years into the middle of life, not tacked on sick years at the end.
Hmm.
But up until this point, we have not really been able to reverse the clock.
True.
And we have not been able to achieve immortality. I
Hmm.
do not see that happening in my lifetime. I do see healthy years expanding. I think that's something we both can expect
Yeah.
during the course of our lives. But I don't think turning back the clock is fully realistic, nor do I think it's really healthy for a population psychology to think they can do that.
True, true. I was looking at this New York Times piece, Seven Keys to Longevity.
Yeah,
It says, ignore the hyperbaric chambers, the infrared lights. These are evidence-based secrets. These are the evidence-based secrets to aging well. And theirs is pretty simple. Number one is move more. Number two is eat more fruits and vegetables. Number four is don't smoke. Don't drink too much either. Five is manage your chronic conditions. Number six, prioritize your relationships. Number seven, cultivate a positive mindset.
yeah.
It kind of makes a lot of sense in a way, you know?
They're all fundamentals, and they've been
Yeah,
tested over thousands of years. So it's not just some magic pill that someone has said you should take. These are real interventions that we know work based on thousands of years of evidence.
yeah,
Thousands of years of evidence. So, for most people, if we can impart on them these fundamentals, like these are the basics. If you get these basics right, you're going to really succeed. But also, if we can expect society and, yes, government to make and help us achieve these interventions, that's even all the better.
yeah,
Basic things, Charles, basic things like just access to clean water, making sure the garbage gets picked up once
yeah,
a week. That really influences the direction of a person or a group of people's longevity.
yeah,
So, yeah, they're fundamentals for a reason. They've been tested for thousands of years for a reason. We know they work. We
yeah.
know they work. And we need to do a better job of making sure that more people have access to them and more people practice them.
True. Here's a few more news items. Healthy vegetarian diet linked to lower risks of death from any cause. Climbing stairs is linked to longevity boosts. How many flights is enough? I'm a longevity expert. I swear by these five supplements. So it really seems like there's, you know, still a lot of conversation to be had. And uh, where do you see this longevity within the next few years uh, going, and what should be the focus for most today? Because I'm big into health and wellness
Yeah.
and overall health, and just really educating people on what they can do today while we look at the research for tomorrow.
Well, I think the single greatest thing we can do today is close the gaps.
Mm,
Close the gaps between lifespan and healthy longevity. I think that's a huge one. The other one is making sure that we close the racial and income gaps across the country and around the world. If we truly believe that everyone should have access to healthy longevity, and I do believe that we should all have access to healthy longevity, those things are within our power today. They're within our control, or at least within the control of our leaders to a large degree. So that's where I know we can affect change immediately. The science that's happening right now, that's going to move the needle too. We should hope that the government, who is a big funder of research on longevity, especially human health, continues to invest. These are things that we can hope for, but I don't think a magic pill is something we can expect overnight. I don't think people should be overly excited about supplements they see being hawked on
mm,
TikTok or social media that don't necessarily have a lot of efficacy. I think if you really, again, center in on those fundamentals and really educate yourself about what we know works, that can have a real outsized impact in your future, but of course, your family's future and your community's future as well.
yeah,
Longevity really can be contagious.
yeah.
Once people sink into this idea that living well, eating well, being socialized is so central to their well-being and their future.
And I'll say this too. I see people who I was driving the other day. I saw a lady who probably looked like she was at least 50 pounds overweight, smoking a cigarette in the car.
Sure.
And I'm just thinking, why?
Yeah.
I mean, and then, obviously the foods that we eat, from the fast foods, the junk foods, all the things that we know we shouldn't be eating. And, I think once we change that mindset of realizing how short life and how precious that this life is, we can then start taking those proper steps toward, reversing that biological clock, just by discipline, self control, positive mindset, those go a long way too as well. And I think that, with the advancements in research and things like that, that, may not be a magic pill, but it might be something that directs us toward understanding how, if we have all those fundamentals, that this other thing can work hand in hand with that too as well.
Absolutely. And, we've had this conversation before
Yeah,
during filming.
yeah,
I went on my own journey.
yeah,
Um, Following COVID, I think like most Americans, I had put on extra weight that was really holding me back. I saw an increase in my blood pressure. I was constantly lethargic. And I realized that a full sale kind of reorganization of my life was probably what I really needed. But
mhm,
was that really sustainable to think of it all at once? And I know, based on the way we think as human beings, we can take little bites here and there that lead up to behavioral change. They can take about 2 months to really sink in. And I bit in with two things. The first thing was gave up sodas.
hmm,
I drank diet soda all the time. Diet
yeah,
soda is terrible for you.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
something I could give up
yeah,
relatively easily, or at
yeah,
least reduce to start. The other
mhm,
thing I did, super simple, anyone can do it, is I made a promise to myself that if I picked up a product in the grocery store and I looked at the recipes on the back, the ingredients on the back, and I didn't know what a single ingredient was, I put the back on the shelf.
yeah,
I
yeah,
put it back on the shelf because hyper processed, overly processed foods are really terrible for our gut.
yeah,
They
yeah,
fill us up and they're cheap.
yeah,
And that's, I guess, a positive, but
yeah,
we're not getting the actual nutrients out of them that we need. So these were really two small interventions, didn't have a massive impact on my overall budget. Of course, there was a bit of increase, eating more fresh meats in
yeah,
particular.
yeah.
But on the whole, in about a year's time, I lost 40 pounds. It
Wow.
didn't happen overnight.
Yeah, yeah,
It happened slow and steady. And that's the way people really
true.
should want to modify their behaviors because they're far more sustainable that way.
Yeah, true.
Um, a year later or so, I don't even think about my practice anymore. It is my practice. I
Yeah.
still continue to lose, albeit at a much slower rate,
Mhm.
that additional weight.
Yeah, yeah. Bradley, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you're currently doing.
Sure. So I have a demographic strategy practice called Human Change. You can get to us at behumanchange.com. And what I do is help companies understand this big shift of demographics that we're experiencing right now as birth rates continue to decrease and longevity on average continues to increase. It's requiring all sorts of new strategies for businesses to rethink how they reach consumers, how they talk to a brand new set, a very large set of older customers, and how they plan for their future, both in terms of their labor and their customer strategies. But also this year, I launched a new media company with my co-founder, Marcia Stepanek, called New Rules Media. You can find us at newrulesmedia.substack.com. And what we're doing is we're reporting on this really significant period of change we're going through right now and helping people build resilience through service journalism on various and sundry subjects. In fact, this week, I'm writing an article about the shifting nature of how we're going after food. So, this conversation today is really timely. Inflation is up, the mood is down nationwide, and people are looking for new sources of sustenance. And they're shopping at more grocery stores, trying to find deals. But we're also seeing a growing number of Americans returning to the basics.
Hmm,
They're actually gardening again. They're actually
hmm,
putting vegetables and fruits into their backyards. And for those people in urban settings, into pots that might sit on their balcony or inside their home next to a window, or
yeah.
even in community gardens. It's really something that's interesting and I hope will lead to greater health outcomes in the future.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. And our series is looking amazing. I might give you a sneak peek of that first episode. It's almost done. We're just getting a couple of little simple edits, but it looks. I'm so pleased with it. But
Good.
thank you, brother Bradley.
Thank you, sir.
We will be doing some stuff, and I'll put your link up too as well for people to be able to reach out to you. And let's keep pushing this healthy thing.
Good thing, sir. Good
All right.
seeing you today. Thanks so much.
You too. You too. Bye bye. All right. So excited, excited. I love this conversation. I'm really passionate about health, really passionate about helping people. And, I think that the way we're going about this and trying to reach a newer audience, mixed audience of all people, but definitely putting this information out there so that folks that even who look like me can hear, folks, people like Bradley who are have a lot to share when it comes to health and wellness and longevity, if that's the word we're pulling out. So that's why we're called urban longevity, because at the end of the day, it's about living our best healthy life as long as we can, as healthy as we can. We have some exciting things coming up. Obviously, we are editing a beautiful series right now, and I did call it a docu-reality series, but it's very different from our past shows in the sense where it's more of a meeting of masterminds that come together to kind of talk about overall health and living longer and healthier lives. And we've got some amazing people on this series, so we're really excited about that. And I think that it can give a run to some of the top things out there and help answer some questions. We're also working on a urban longevity summit, which I think is really cool. What we want to do is make this more for a younger generation, so those amazing scientists and researchers and experts can come together, meet some young future leaders in the health space and the longevity space, and help inspire them, but also get that information out there to their peers and to this emerging audience that, like Bradley said, the future is really is where it's at, right? And we may not see that living to 200-300 years of age, but we know that the next generation may come up with something that allows us to continue living a healthier, longer life. So tune in, follow us on our reversed pages on Facebook, and also reversed TV series on Instagram. We'll put the links here below, and look forward to some more powerful shows. We're going to have some really interesting and creative people coming on, so get ready for that. All right, bye bye.